Gita down. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. And people of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of Geeta. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent, and the crippled cross mountains. Okay. So, Supreme Self, Supreme Spirit. Continue. So we'll pick up here, we read this yesterday. The deluded do not see him who departs, stays and enjoys, but they possess the eye, they who possess the eye of knowledge, behold him. So who wants to say something about that? The deluded do not see him, capital him, who, capital A, capital W, not H, departs, stays and enjoys, but they who possess the eye of knowledge behold him. Who wants to speak to that?
Those that are caught in duality and do not go within to find the truth through scripture, guru, and contemplation, just stay in the rat race and never give themselves an opportunity to discover the self, the supreme self, which is existence, knowledge, bliss absolute.
Oh. Good. So here's the commentary from Swami Satchidananda. He says, though the self, capital S self, is nearest and comes most easily within their field of vision or consciousness. So if we listen to that for a second, do we recognize, do we catch what is the closest to you? Sometimes you'll hear like this, closer than your own jugular vein. Huh? Yeah, capital S. Or Lord Krishna. Lord. Krishna is one name. Huh? Oh. So, closer than anything. Huh? Your own self. All right. Closer than anything, yes? Closer than this. Although the self is nearest and comes most easily within their field of vision or consciousness. This is their situation. This isn't judgment. This is the situation we're in. Although this, the ignorant and the deluded are not able to behold him because they're swayed by the qualities of nature. Their minds constantly run towards the sense objects and are saturated with passion. They identify the self with the body. Their vision is engrossed in external forms, but those who are endowed with the inner eye of intuition do behold him. So, and this speaks to the state. And this is where we have that conversation again about whether something's hard. Because it's quite embedded, isn't it? We can be just fine sitting in a quiet space like this. All right? We can be just fine sitting in a quiet space like this, bringing our awareness inside. But as soon as someone's standing in front of you screaming, how are you then? And what does the mind do?
Defense.
Want to
Goes into defensive mode.
Right, self-defense mechanisms are arising, yes? And so, but what's really here? Is it something different than what was here when I was sitting quietly for meditation, Ari?
No.
No. So this is what we're dealing with. And by the way, successively as you unwrap, then there are layers that you didn't know about that will appear, right? Some sort of mechanism, defense mechanism or assertion mechanism or something like this that's there then. And of course, what's going to happen is that you unwrap something and then the universe will probe the next level and push on this. So, and look at the stuff happening in the mind. I mean, just, and this is what we consider to be normal, but as soon as you hear that white object over there, just look at that. How quickly does a name for that arise?
Instantaneously.
And is there even some curiosity about it? So how many objects a day? How many thoughts a day? 70-some thousand.
Yes.
And almost all objectified, related to some object, some morsel of food, some smell, some taste, right?
Or problems, plans, and relationships.
Sorry?
Or problems, plans, and relationships.
Or problems, plans, and relationships. So we're not complaining here. We're just introspecting and seeing.
Yes.
And
like
so
autopilot.
well, yeah, it's like an autopilot. It's like an autopilot. Very much.
This morning with the tea. I
Oh,
went to offer to do the tea and looked in there and couldn't see very well because it was dark and my eyes weren't doing it. And kind of assumed there was some water maybe a little bit left pulled at the bottom, so I go to dump it and somehow lost the ball in the sink and it's all super loud. I'm like, oh, this is helping. And I'd felt the ball.
well, but all the thoughts arising with all that stuff.
Most of them were assumptions. Because
yeah.
I'd felt the ball and my hands are all weird from dealing with the iodine in the dishes.
Nice.
So I couldn't feel moisture, but I felt the weight of the herbs in there. So I was like, oh, it needs to be changed.
Right.
It never occurred to me it had been done already.
Right. And what the Lord is saying is, this is all me. And not just saying it, not just asserting it, but proving it, demonstrating it, teaching us to recognize it.
Yes.
Giving us tools with which to see it.
Observing.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, and then, and with the eye of wisdom or the eye of intuition to behold him. So, and here's why. And I looked in the various commentaries, and every one of them refer back to Katha Upanishad. And this particular sutra, Yama said to Nachiketas, the self-existent Brahma created the senses with outgoing tendencies.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be said like, put a scar in them.
Put a scar?
Put a defect in them, or put a star in them. Different translations or commentaries on this sutra in Katha Upanishad. Therefore, man beholds the external universe and not the internal self. He added, but some wise men, with their senses turned away from the objects, desirous of immortality, turn their gaze inwards and behold the self, capital S self, within, seated in the heart. And it's Katha-upanishad. Last night, we picked up this Bhagavad Gita, and we were playing with it a little bit. And so this sutra, number 3, very, very early on in it, we had read, and we read the commentary and talked about it. It's, you are neither, this is Ashtavakra, who's a sage speaking to his student, King Janaka. And these are, as far as we know, genuine figures in ancient times, saying this: you are neither earth, nor water, nor fire, nor air, nor space. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Light, spirit.
You are not earth. You are not water.
All immortals.
You are not air. You are not fire. You're not space. So these are the 5 elements. You're not any of these. So you're not the body. Because the body is constructed of these. So these are constructed of divine stuff, but still, they're the 5 elements. In order to attain freedom, know the capital S self as the witness of all these, the embodiment of pure consciousness itself. So that's what we were taking yesterday evening, right? Saying. Let's see. Oh. So and by the way, when we're sitting in satsang and, non-disturbance and nobody's screaming fire or anything like that, and if we're alert, if tamas isn't resident, if we're not nodding off and trying to go to sleep, because we're just having a tough time waking up, or if we're not thinking about what I should be doing instead of this, then sattva is prevailing, and we're able to be present and listen to this, and we get it. But then the question is, can we practice it? Can we be it? Can we not forget it, regardless of what's happening? And this is what we're dealing with. And so it would be hard to say that the practice is easy. Because it wants to be a constant. But experience says that which is hard is good too. So we can be reminded it's good though. It's good. It's good. It's propitious. It's beneficial. It's salvation. It's the way out of the madness. And the next sutra, or next shloka, we deal with that. Swami Satchidananda speaks to it. So, but this we're reminded of is why it is that we're not seeing. Because the way we have learned to see is to see through these. And to hear through these, and to smell through this, and we've come to know that which the senses can apprehend, but not what's underlying it. So we're not seeing the reality of it, and it's because the senses and the mind were made to be outgoing. The Creator, Brahma, the Creator, created us with instruments that are looking out, not in. But what we're seeking is in. So we actually literally have to learn to turn them around.
Your choice.
Om. Those who possess the inner eye of knowledge behold that the self is entirely distinct from the body. They realize the self's separate existence from the body and know that the body moves and acts on account of its presence, the soul's presence, just as the iron moves and acts in the presence of the magnet. we can see that too, right? So what we call death, we can recognize, I feel like everybody here can recognize that there's something departing from the body, which is not a thing. Right? Has anybody been with anyone when they left the body? So it is an experience of something, not a thing, departing from the body.
Great.
And then the body afterwards, before it was animated and moving and laughing and crying and all of this, right? And then after?
Like a sock.
Yeah. Inanimate, right? Nothing. And so clearly something left it.
There was a study that was made about like they weighted the body
Yeah.
before after death.
Please.
For like a few
Yeah,
grams of difference.
Please, yeah.
After, so that was the weight of the astral body. You can say.
What was the weight?
Like that.
Astrocausal.
I missed it. How much was the weight?
I forgot the number, but it's
Few
just like
grams.
a few grams. It's very
Yeah.
small weight, but it's a small difference.
Yeah.
So those who possess the inner eye of knowledge behold that the self is entirely distinct from the body. So yes, I mean, it's the capital S self, the soul, departs the body and takes with it the vital airs, right? The mental function, etc. But still, when it's disassociated from the body, then the body has lost all of this that we think of as life, but the life remains. Just no longer associated with that physical body. And so, who is that? Those who possess the inner eye of knowledge behold that the self is distinct from the body, entirely distinct from the body. So I, sitting here, am not this body. Okay, 11. The yogins, striving for perfection, behold him dwelling in the self, but the unrefined and unintelligent, even though striving, see him not. And I'll just read the commentary from Swami Satchidananda here. Master Satchidananda says, the description of the evolution of the individual soul is now complete. The yogins who strive with an iron determination, fiery resolve, faith, earnestness, and well-balanced mind see him established in their own hearts. This is called, if we've heard of Carl Jung, the great psychologist, he calls it the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell wrote so much and talked so much about this. Joseph Campbell is one of the great wise ones. Who's heard of Joseph Campbell? Somewhere along the way. And he speaks of the archetypes and the hero's journey. I was with a dear soul 2 weeks ago who actually uses Jung's chart of the hero's journey. It's a circle coming back to the center, which is what's being discussed here. So the yogins who strive with an iron determination, who say, I shall, and don't give up. Fiery resolve, faith, earnestness, and well-balanced mind see him established in their mind, in their hearts. They behold him dwelling in their own mind or intellect. They recognize him, and he quotes this, I am. But those who are of dull intellect and without proper discipline of the mind and the senses, where the mind and the senses carry them away. Ego will hear dull as judgmental. Let it go. He'll say, I'm not dull. It's not speaking to the eye because the eye is completely pure. It's the light. The eye is completely pure. It's the light. So dull here simply meaning that the instrument, the primary instrument that's being used, which is the intellect, is still caught up in the sense objects. That's what it's meaning. Still being bandied about, still being tossed about by what someone does or says or doesn't do or doesn't say, etc. That's what it's meaning.
Needs to be sharpened.
So it's not judgmental at all. It's just It's just speaking to the state that we find ourselves in, and the state that we find ourselves in is perfect for where we are. And we're always starting from here, you know. And introspection helps us because we can look and say, this is what I'm dealing with. Right? I'm soul, I'm not this body. Mm-hmm. And most of the time we can actually remember it. I'm soul, I'm not this body. And here's a tendency that's arising that I always lose myself to, or I often will lose myself to, right? This is something that will happen. Somebody says something, I take it as judgmental upon me, and I stew in it. And I just repeat it to myself over and over again, and I look at them, and I judge them, and all of this. I mean, everybody deals with something like this, right? And everybody deals with something like this. And so in introspection, we can look at it and say, this is a problem for me. Because when this happens, I lose myself. I forget everything important. I get caught up. I become angry. I run away. I feel the strong urge to run away. All of this. And this is sadhana. It's the practice of sadhana. Everybody's working on something here. I'm working on this. You're working on that. But we came here to work this out. So here, without proper discipline of the mind and the senses, and I don't yet have control of this mind. This mind tends to lead me here and there. So I can look at so many examples of that, and I wouldn't sit here and say I have absolute control now. But it's a whole different scenario. It used to just take an ice cream cone or a car. Every time I would see a car, I would get vaulted away into the world of cars. Mm-hmm. And I would find, and this was what happened, someday I realized, oh my God, I've been test driving every car I see.
Really?
In the mind. Yeah.
In the mind.
Yeah, or test driving people, or all of this, right? So, and taking control of our life really is about taking control of this process and straightening it out. And it has to be non-judgmental. It's just where I am right now. Yeah? And so getting it in order, which is I don't want to test drive every car. I don't want to test drive people. I don't want to. And when you get to the point of contemplating the truth, dear Lord, I want to think of you. I want to serve you. I don't want to get wrapped up in all of this other stuff because it's not beneficial. It's not beneficial for me. It's not beneficial for anyone. What really got me was when I saw the way that I had been living my life, that I was really, as far as I could tell, of no benefit to anyone. Because I was always carrying ideas of supremacy, and then resulting anger, judgment. Everybody was judged for everything. Every object was, every person was. And so I realized at some point, oh my God, this is a terror because I'm carrying this around to everyone. Every room I enter, I bring this.
Yeah.
And so...
Can I put a couple more
Please.
words to that?
Please do.
Another way to look at it is that you're maintaining a lack mentality because you're always
Yes,
looking at
that's it.
what you don't, quote unquote, have.
Yeah.
And rather than living, and that in lack, there's separation from God. So it's
Duality.
yeah, and then the contrast is being abundant in the present moment within yourself, connected with God, not seeking for things you don't have. Yeah.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then staying in this place all of the time. Non-disturbance. And so that's the hero's journey, and that's the path of yoga. Swami Shivananda speaks of this. He says, but those who have dull intellect without proper discipline of the mind and senses, who have not been purified by austerity, selfless service and charity, who have not subdued their senses, who have not practiced regular meditation, who have not given up their detrimental ways, who have not eradicated lust, pride, egoism, anger, greed, and hypocrisy, who have not developed true discrimination between the real and the unreal, however hard they may struggle to know him by any means of the study of sacred scriptures, do not behold him. So he says the goal, the Supreme Being, which the fire, stars, lightning, sun, and moon do not illumine, having reached which the aspirants do not return to this samsara, or the world of birth and death, of which individual souls are imaginary parts. Just as the ether in the pot becomes identical with the universal ether, when the limiting adjunct pot is broken, Swamiji used 2 days ago, used the example of a pot made of ice and water inside and water outside. So also the individual soul becomes identical with the Supreme Being when the limiting adjunct, which is just one, and that's ignorance. Holding on to the feeling of separation and taking it to be real. That feeling of separation is the avidya. That's the primal nescience, or the ignorance, and it's been planted in each. It's a part of the quote unquote creative process called Maya. So also the individual soul becomes identical with the Supreme Being when the limiting adjunct, ignorance, is destroyed through the knowledge of the self or self-realization, born of meditation on the right significance of the great sentences of the Upanishads, such as Tattvamasi, thou art that, or Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Supreme Being. Then she realizes that Brahman is the essence of all, and that he is the basis of all experiences. It is the basis of all experiences. In order to make Arjuna understand this, the Lord gives a brief summary of his manifestations in the following 4 verses, and we'll pick those up. Okay, there's a bookmark here somewhere that we'll use. I realized this morning, Hara comes every, not quite every day, most days, Hara comes. And Hara was standing in front of me this morning, and I looked at him and I realized, because you don't notice these things when they happen gradually, you're taller.
Hara's taller? Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
3 inches.
No way.
Yeah. Yoga life. It's a side benefit. It's actually a side benefit.
Oh yeah.
We were talking with someone yesterday about the process of what we call physical death, that it's inevitable, but one doesn't have to die because death is only associated with the body. And what we were talking about is renunciation. This is what we're discussing right now, which is when one actually is succeeding at disidentifying with the body. And this is an inner process, It's real. Not identifying with the body, and instead identifying with spirit. Often someone whose body is in the state of deterioration, which dear Hara's was very much so. When Hara came here, big humpback, from 7 broken spines, 7
surgeries.
Yeah,
6
surgeries,
broken vertebrae.
COPD.
Yep.
Couldn't breathe crossing the parking lot.
Oh.
So one would say not long.
That's what the doctor said.
He knew it. But what will often happen is it changes that affiliation.
Yeah.
That inner affiliation, then the body somehow experiences a miraculous recovery, what we call a miraculous recovery.
By itself.
It speaks to
Letting
it
go
speaks
of
to
it.
why it is that things happen. Why do they happen to me? And we could say ultimately everything is a teacher.
Yes.
And when you learn the lesson, the experience that you're having will change.
Yeah.
And so we've seen Swami Arjuna Krishnananda. Do you remember him? Does anybody here know him? Okay. He was in the yoga farm, and when I completed the walk, and that's several years ago now, so I guess I wouldn't expect anybody to know him. 2016, so 6 years ago. I've been called to go back to the yoga farm, and I didn't know why, but I went. I committed for 6 months, and I ended up supporting Swami Arjuna Krishnananda's path.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was close to that point. But 3 years earlier, he'd been in heart failure. And he took sannyas. He made the decision to renounce. It's called deathbed sannyas. And there was an example of this. Deathbed sannyas, which is where he said, okay, my life is all screwed up, and I missed the opportunity to do the right things, but I want to do them now. Now I want to disaffiliate with this body, and I want to connect with the Absolute. And so he contacted Swami Geeta and said, please give me sannyas. And he's like, last breath kind of stuff. And she said, okay, and she did it on the spot. And 3 years later, no heart failure. The fluid in the lungs is gone.
Of course.
But by the way, I went out because it was getting to be time for him to depart from the body. So we were asked to care for him and support. So eventually it happens, you know. But he was disaffiliated at the end. He was disaffiliated, disidentified, and identified with the real.
Yes.
What a relief.
What a relief, right? What a relief. So we say these physical effects are a bonus. The physical effects of yoga, they're actually a bonus. The people in the West, they think the reason I practice yoga is in order to straighten my back and
Straightness.
yeah, yes, open up the eye of wisdom. See who I am, recognize my proper affiliation. Realign.
Yes.
That's alignment practice. Realign. Align my affiliation with the Absolute instead of the body. That's alignment practice. Yes. And then, when it comes time, no suffering.
Yes.
You are what you've always been. You are what you've always been, which is the truth for each of us. We always are what we are. And we are no doubt eternal. No doubt.
No doubt.
Oh,
Oh.
you had something you would
I just remember they thought he was almost done, and they invited him to. He wanted to go to the yoga farm. He wanted to be out in nature,
Yeah.
and then they're surprised that he lasted for another 6 months or something. He just kept going.
Well, it was more than that. It was a
more
year
than
and a half.
A year and a half?
at the yoga farm.
Oh,
Yeah.
But he was like that. He was the comeback kid.
yeah.
And by the way, the first thing that saved him was the desire to serve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to cook. He'd shown up at the San Francisco Shivananda Yoga Center one day,
I
and
remember the
he didn't know how to cook. And he asked Swami Geeta. He said, "Can I do something to help to serve?" And she said, "Well, we need a cook." And so he learned how to cook, and he made this amazing fried rice, vegan fried rice. Everybody at the ashram would be excited on the days that he was going to cook in the morning.
Yeah. He did that at the farm too. Everybody like, all right, get his everything ready for him.
Yeah.
He'd come down.
So we would never talk about him dying because he didn't.
No.
Oh, okay, let's close. Final prayer, page 174. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Suvandim Pushtivardhanam Urvaivamniva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshyamam Mritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Suvandim Pushtivardhanam Urvaivamniva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshyamam Mritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Suvandim Pushtivardhanam Urvaivamniva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshyamam Mritat. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavantu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavantu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pasyantu Makashi Dukhabhave Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mritorma Mritangamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble Sakura Chipman and
Jai.
and for all of the saints and sages of all the traditions.
Jai.